What's up everybody? Hey Thunder, I see you in the back. Today's video is going to be called What Not to Do with Your Ackie Monitor. Now, today's video is going to highlight some common mistakes that keepers tend to make when they're keeping Ackie monitors. Now, as a disclaimer, I am not an expert. Most of the information I'm getting is coming from suggestions from people who have been keeping Ackie monitors well over 10 years. Majority of them breeders. Also, care guides that I've read, other research that I've done, and a little bit of trial and error that I went through myself. The reason I'm making this video isn't to attack anybody who's made these mistakes. Like I've said before, I've made mistakes as well in reptile keeping, and I've made a mistake or two when I brought Thunder home as well, when I was dialing everything in and just learning how to keep him. The thing is, whenever you're bringing a reptile home, or any pet for that matter, you want to make sure you do as many things right as possible from the very beginning, so that way your animal has a good, healthy experience with you, and you have a good, healthy experience with your animal. So the main goal today is only to give suggestions that I personally believe will help your Ackie monitor stay healthy, so that way they can live a good, long life, and so you guys can be happy watching your Ackie be a nice, healthy, vibrant, intelligent, inquisitive animal. Guys, so let's start with the first thing that we need to stop doing when it comes to Ackie monitors. So the first thing you don't want to do is put these guys in the wrong enclosure. Now guys, I understand, I get it. Before I got my Ackie monitor, I had leopard geckos, blue-tongued skinks, I've had snakes, and the thing is, it's not to say that a PVC or a wooden enclosure wouldn't be better for those animals as well. But in my personal opinion, and I'm sure a lot of breeders and guys who have been doing this for a long time would back me on this, it is 100% mandatory to put your animal in the correct enclosure and have the temperatures and humidity dialed in before you bring the animal home. I'm seeing a lot of guys who are keeping these animals in like 10-gallon enclosures the first month, and a lot of these guys do have their heart in the right place where they want to build their enclosure for their animal and they make a spectacular enclosure after. But guys, here's the issue. The reason that a lot of Ackies have issues with health problems, the problems came from issues when they were young during the developmental years of the animal growing up. And the thing is, this enclosure is a ceiling enclosure where it's going to trap the heat and humidity. Your temperatures are going to be more stable. Your humidity is not going to waft out of the enclosure. But here's the issue when you put this animal in a glass enclosure while it's growing up. Glass is not a good conductor of heat. Like for example, like if you guys have ever walked up to a reptile enclosure, not a fish tank, a reptile enclosure, if you touch the glass, even if the glass is heated, the glass is still cooler to the touch than the wood or the PVC that it's made out of. Guys, heat rises. And another issue that we have isn't just the materials that the enclosure is made out of. If the enclosure has a screen top, and guys, listen, unless you live in Florida or a tropical area and you have high humidity inside your house, you're literally doing your animal a disservice by keeping them in a screen top for the first couple of months or for however long of their life. I get it, guys. Ackie monitors are exciting animals, and it's so awesome to see a monitor lizard that's so small and looks so much more manageable. And guys, I get the attraction. You see this animal and you see how interactive they can be, and you see how much personality they have. But at the same time, guys, this is an animal that will get sick and will get a lot of health problems from being in the wrong enclosure. Now, animals like geckos and small colubrids, some other animals, can do just fine in a glass enclosure and actually live their full lifespan relatively healthy with no health problems. But your Ackie monitor can get a respiratory infection from not having the proper humidity. It can get sick from not having the proper temps. If the temperatures aren't stable, you can wind up getting kinks in your animal's tail. That's another sign of these guys being started off incorrectly or being held in an enclosure that's not suitable for them. And the thing is, hey buddy, and the thing is, guys, what you want to do is you want to start these guys off in an enclosure that is either a wooden or PVC enclosure that is at least a size, at the very least, a 4x2x2 with a dig box, so they'll have enough space to completely bury their body as they grow, because these guys don't stay small for very long. Or a 4x3x2, which is the minimum of the room that you want horizontally, but those are better because you'll get a full foot of space below the door of the enclosure. So that way the animal will have 12 inches of substrate in order to dig into. Ackie monitors will drink water, but they don't drink water often. A lot of reptiles don't drink water often, but particularly Ackie monitors. So with that being said, their humidity has to be stable within their enclosure. Their humidity, if you look at mine right now, mine is about 40 with the door open, but before I opened the door, my ambient humidity was about 50%. Now, that's because of these hot lights. When the lights are no longer drying out the air constantly, when these things click off of the timer at night, my humidity spikes to about 70-80%. What's up, bud? My humidity in my dig box is much higher than the humidity that's in the rest of my enclosure. A lot of times when we think about humidity, the only thing that we're thinking about as far as general reptile care is making sure that the animal has enough moisture so that way it could shed easily. And that's important too, because Ackie monitors will lose tips of their tail and they will lose toes if they're in an enclosure that's not providing the proper humidity. But they will also get respiratory infections. Guys, if you see your Ackie monitor sneezing and doing all these things where it might seem kind of cute, like, okay, that's a little weird, what's he doing? That can be early signs of an upper respiratory infection. That's why it's so important to have an enclosure where the humidity is not leaking out and your temperatures are stable. Now, guys, keep in mind, right? I understand the concern when you see an enclosure like this, because you're thinking, oh, well, how is your Ackie monitor getting the proper amount of air that it needs? Guys, trust me, if you have sliding glass doors in the front, there's enough air exchange between these doors where this animal's not losing the air. Plus, if you have an Ackie monitor, you're more than likely going to be dealing with it and opening up the enclosure on a daily basis, working with it, taming it out, feeding it, doing your normal husbandry of cleaning the enclosure and rearranging stuff that they've moved around. So with that being said, these guys don't have an issue from being in an enclosure like this and not having enough fresh air to breathe. The thing I'm going to highlight what not to do with an Ackie monitor is get the wrong bulbs. Now guys, listen, the bulbs that you need for an Ackie monitor are very easy to obtain. You can find them at Lowe's, you can find them at Home Depot, you can find them on Amazon. These are just common floodlight bulbs that people have for their houses, and these are bulbs that people just use for lighting. So they're not particularly hard to find. They're not a specialty reptile bulb. They're literally just a bulb that we as people use for vision, but wind up working very well for Ackie monitors. And here's the issue with spot bulbs, guys. The issue with spot bulbs is that the beam of heat is too small. Now, granted, this may only work for a short amount of time, even though I don't recommend starting off that way. We want to start off our Ackies the right way. Have I used spot bulbs before when I first got Thunder? Yes, but the more I learned, the more positive changes I wanted to make to my husbandry. The awesome thing about Par 38 floodlights is that these bulbs give a nice wide beam of heat. So that way, even though Thunder's grown over time, he can still heat his body up efficiently. So that way, he doesn't have to worry about heating up one part of his body too much and heating up another part of his body too little. If this guy's trying to get warm and if that beam is too small, he's going to wind up getting burns, and that's what you want to avoid for your Ackie monitor. All right, guys, another thing that you don't want to do when you're getting Ackie Monitor, and like I said, everyone gets excited when they get an Ackie, is feed these guys the wrong diet. That means giving these guys too many eggs, too many pinkies, giving them raw cuts of meat and different things like that that aren't whole prey, so they don't even have bone, they're not giving calcium. All they're giving them is a lot of flesh proteins and things like that. That's not the type of stuff that you want to give these guys. Ackie Monitors are primarily insectivores. 95% of this animal's diet is supposed to be insects. Now, granted, can these guys eat pinkies? Of course they can. Can these guys eat eggs and different things like that? Of course they can. But guys, it's portion control. There's a reason that a lot of the experts say that you should be feeding these guys those things once a month. The diet that I'm currently feeding right now, guys, is consisting primarily of dubia roaches. Once a week, I'll add some crickets. Once in a while, I'll feed some mealworms. Rarely these guys will get superworms just because they're bigger and they have like a higher fat content. And the thing is, even though those are insects, and you can get away with it while your Akkie's young, but as they get older, that's gonna be a lot of fat that those guys are consuming. And remember, these guys aren't out in the outback where they're running around constantly looking for food. And remember, in the wild, predators aren't always successful in their catches. As ravenous and as good of hunters as Ackie Monitors are, they're getting a lot of exercise to get their meals in the wild, instead of just being fed insects in an enclosure where the insects can't really escape from the Ackie, or being fed straight to them off tongs. So just keep that in mind, guys. Portion control and feed the right foods. So yeah, guys, dubia roaches I think are number one. Red runner roaches are also really good. If you can get these guys locusts and you live in the UK, that's another really good staple food. For all feeders, I would highly encourage gut loading your feeders for at least a week if you can keep them in your house before feeding them off to your Ackie Monitor. It'd be really cool if we can get captive bred grasshoppers. Those would be awesome to find for these guys. A lot of people have a lot of really cool roach colonies and things like that. Hopefully in the future, if I can coax my wife to keep some of that stuff for food, that will be my primary source of food for all of my insectivores that I have in my reptile collection, but especially for my Ackie. And guys, don't get me wrong, I get the excitement. A lot of times you'll see the larger monitors, and what are they feeding on? Rodents, meat. I'm sure everybody who knows a thing or two about monitor lizards and got to see Komodo dragons saw them eat pigs and deer and stuff like that over on the Komodo Islands. It's awesome. It's great. And yes, these guys are monitor lizards. But guys, keep in mind, it's an Ackie. They're primarily insectivores. Keep your Akkie's diet 90-95% insects. Only feed eggs, pinkies, and things like that about once a month, and your Ackie will be in great health. Oh, and the number 4 topic on the list, guys, is force handling. Guys, I understand. I see these questions all the time. I get them on my YouTube videos, and I see them on Ackie Monitors fans page all the time. I just got my Ackie Monitor. I've had him for 3 weeks. It's been almost a month. When can I handle my Ackie? Interacting with him, touching him. Guys, be patient. These guys are really intelligent, and if they get in their minds that you're some type of predator trying to harm them, you're gonna ruin the relationship that you have with your Ackie. Think about how expensive Ackies are, and think about how expensive the enclosure is, and think about all this trouble that you went through to find a breeder, get the right enclosure, and even all the trouble of going to get the Ackie, because these guys are tough to find. And then next thing you know, your Ackie can't stand you. It's always running from you. If you even get close to it, it doesn't want to be anywhere near you. Guys, these are things that can happen if you force handle these animals. Here's the thing, guys. When I first got Thunder, if you guys look at my first video, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I was like, wow, I was so excited. He was in the deli cup, and I was like, ooh, okay, all I want to do is just touch it. You know what I'm saying? It's a monitor lizard. I was so excited. I never had one before. And being a 3-week-old Ackie Monitor, what do? He zipped off. But that's the thing, there's nothing wrong with that, guys. These guys are so much smaller than us. A lot of people forget, with reptiles in general, how small these guys are compared to us. Most people are about at least 5 feet tall, right? Standing on 2 legs off the ground. These guys only stand a few inches above the ground. We're so much larger than them. We are literally Godzilla to these little reptiles. You gotta keep in mind that you're intimidating to this animal. Make sure your animal's healthy. If you want to do your animal a service and you really love your animal, make sure that you're doing your maintenance, you're cleaning up the poop, you're giving the animal water, you're feeding it, all those different things like that. Don't try to grab it. Do not grab it. I'm gonna say it for a 3rd time. Don't grab your Ackie, especially if it's already ran away from you. If it's already ran away from you and hid somewhere, don't pull it out of its hide. That is the worst thing that you can do with an Ackie. It's gonna associate you with a predator. Give it time. In time, once it notices, hey, every time this guy comes around and opens up the door, I get food. Hey, when this guy comes around, he's not grabbing me or darting towards me. Maybe this person doesn't want to do me harm. And the thing is, guys, when you do that, you're going to start putting positive reinforcement into your Ackie Monitor, and then slowly but surely, you're going to start to gain its trust. And here we are now. Yeah, so see, guys, just be patient. The reward is definitely much better than trying to force a relationship on these animals. That's the thing, guys. Ackie Monitors are very inquisitive, and as they get older, they're going to get a lot braver. They're going to get used to seeing you instead of what's that giant monster over there. And when they start to approach you on their own, that's when you start building the relationship. Don't try to touch them all the time. Sometimes it's literally just sitting in front of the enclosure, sometimes even with the door closed. As your animal gets used to you more, sit in front of the enclosure with the door open. Keep your arm in there for a little while. Let it get used to your scent. Let it approach you. Let it establish the relationship. That's really what you want to do with your Ackie Monitor. Thunder's full off all those roaches. I hope you enjoyed this video titled, What Not to Do with Your Ackie Monitor. Like I said before, this is not an attack on anybody who's making these mistakes. Some of these mistakes I did make early on, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Or what I'm trying to help you guys with is just to let everybody know different things that can affect your relationship with your Ackie, or more importantly, your Accie's health early on when you first get it. And I'm just trying to give you guys information that will help you keep your animal happy, so that way you can be happy that you bought an Ackie Monitor, and your Ackie Monitor can have a good life living with you versus being in a bad situation. We all love our Ackies, and we all love interacting with reptiles. So I personally believe it's important to try to do things the right way as much as possible from the very beginning, just so that we can start these guys off correctly. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. Everyone have a great day. Peace.